Today on Cyberwork, Ed Williams of TrustWave joins me to discuss the ins and outs of pen testing and red teaming. Now, Ed's been pen testing since 2008, and he's seen methodologies and trends come and go, but the skills are always the same.
You learn so much from other people, from listening to things, from building and tinkering. It takes me back to when I was that 7-year-old on the BBC. I'm basically the same person now, tinkering around.
Ed tells us about some of his favorite red team strategies.
We would send an email saying, "Oh, somebody's going to come and check the fire extinguishers in 2 weeks." So then I'd come along then with my fire extinguisher testing kit on. We'd let reception know and all this stuff.
Explains how he co-authored a red team tool in 2013 that won him accolades.
When you're sort of dealing with threats, the really, really good threat actors, you don't know they're there. You don't know they've even been there. So we're trying to mimic that, making sure that files are not removed or not touched too heavily.
And lets us know that small accumulations of knowledge every day can turn into powerful skill sets in a short period of time.
Couple of steps forward, and what I call it, like stacking days. So you might learn a little command. Eventually, those stacking days will add up, and you'll be in some environment that you've never seen before. Oh yeah, remember that? Boom, boom, boom. You're away. Your route.
That's all today on Cyberwork. The IT and cybersecurity job market is thriving. Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts 377,500 new IT jobs annually. You need skill and hustle to obtain these jobs, of course, but the good news is that cybersecurity professionals can look forward to extremely competitive salaries. That's why InfoSec has leveraged 20 years of industry experience, drawing from multiple sources to give you, Cyberwork listeners, an analysis of the most popular and top-paying industry certifications. You can use it to navigate your way to a good-paying cybersecurity career. So to get your free copy of our Cybersecurity Salary Guide ebook, just click the link in the description below. It's right there near the top, just below me. You can't miss it. Click the link in the description and download our free Cybersecurity Salary Guide ebook. Your cybersecurity journey starts here. Now, let's get the show started. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Senko. My guests are a cross-section of cybersecurity industry thought leaders. Our goal is to help you learn about cybersecurity trends and how those trends affect the work of InfoSec professionals, and leave you with some tips and advice for breaking in or moving up in the cybersecurity industry. My guest today, Ed Williams, is the Vice President of EMEA Consulting and Professional Services at TrustWave. With over a decade of experience in cybersecurity, Ed specializes in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat simulation for both government and private sector clients. As a recognized subject matter expert, Ed frequently speaks at industry conferences and contributes to media outlets. Ed, thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Cyberwork.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great. So Ed, let's start with a bit of you and your early years. No matter how far back I researched into your bio and career, it seems to have always had at least one foot, and more often than not, both feet in IT, information security, and cybersecurity as a whole. Can you remember a moment or a specific incident that made you so excited for computers and tech?
Yeah, that's a great question and very true as well. So I'm 46 years old, and I can remember my dad being very advanced in these things, and he got a BBC Micro, and we must have been the first one in our little village to have a computer. So I was busy programming on the BBC Micro with the old cassette tapes. So it got a hold of me pretty quick and pretty early in my life. So as you said, I've always had a step into computing, and moving through school then it was always there. It's never far away.
That's a brand that has not yet come up on the show. We've heard a lot of Commodores, a lot of TRS-80s, Radio Shack. Is BBC, is that related to the broadcasting company? Did they break into computers?
I don't think it was anything to do with that, actually. It was just a massive bit of kit that weighed a lot.
Yeah,
it was got me into basic programming, and it's brilliant.
And as you mentioned, it goes back to the days of putting a cassette in there and waiting 45 seconds to 3 minutes for a program to load.
And then turning it around, and it would stop and break. And great times.
Hoping that it wouldn't sort of kick out in the middle of
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
The golden age. All right. So Ed, looking at your career arc on LinkedIn, like I said, we're going to be talking a lot about this, but you've been deeply entrenched in penetration testing for most of your adult life. When I think of like sort of the early days of pen testing, you go back to 2008, and I've had Gemma Williams on the show as well, and that feels like sort of like the earliest, almost the prehistory of pen testing. You talk about why you love it so much and why you've been doing it for so long, and with someone with a long arc around it like that, talk about how some of the practice has changed since those early days.
Yeah, there's a lot there. That's a great question. So I went to university to do computer studies. Seemed like a natural thing for me to do. And the course that I did was very, very heavy into Unix. It was a real Unix heavy course, which is great, and I loved it. And looking back now, I can see that security and sort of Unix admin and that type of thing is just embedded into security. So it's been there from the beginning. So I did that. Then I did my a master's degree in information security. I went traveling for a bit, but then I got a proper job, as my parents would say, as a Unix admin and analyst. And from there, then security is always at the forefront. We got a pen tester to come in then into our organization. I thought I did a good job, but he absolutely ripped everything apart. It was it was very enlightening, should we put it that way? And from then, I was just really on the sort of the forefront of, right, I need to do a better job here. Need to make sure that we're secure and that I get all the systems tight. And from there, then we had another pen test a year after, and the same pen tester came back and said, "This is much better. Come and work for a consultants." So I applied. I only had Unix experience. I had no other pen test experience. But he said, "No, that's fine. Come in. We'll get you trained up, and you'll be good to go." And that's really how it all started.
Yeah, did you feel kind of over your head at that point? I mean, because I realized my other guest name was Gemma Moore, not Gemma
Yes,
Williams.
I know
I
Gemma.
conflated
Yeah.
her name with your names, but did you? I got the sense from her, and I guess I'd like to hear your insight as well. But has the human skill needed to excel changed that much, or is it mostly just a difference in tools? Because it seemed like there were less tools then, but there was also maybe less to do in certain ways.
But again, it's a good observation. So the way I see it is, I was authoring reports 20 years ago, and I see reports today. I don't author them as much now as I used to, but they're pretty much the same. The tools and the tactics might have changed, but the skill and the ability to be agile and to think in a different way is exactly the same. So while everything has changed, I'd say nothing has changed as well in some regards.
Is there a sort of a speed difference as well? Because I've certainly right now with the sort of proliferation of more tools and more automation and less sort of busy work. Are you sort of having to think on your feet faster now? Was it a slower process back then?
I would say you had to think on your feet quite a bit, all the way through my career. One thing I would sort of say that I'm pretty good at is thinking on my feet and trying to join two dots that aren't necessarily that easily joinable. You sort of
Right.
force them together. I would say, like, I did a lot of programming in my college and throughout my life, and that has been really useful. Being able to script up something really quickly on the fly in an environment where you maybe didn't have the internet at your hand and being able to work things out, that would sort of accelerate whether you were brute forcing something or password cracking something that you'd not seen before. So to be able to do those types of things has always been invaluable.
How did you sort of build those skill sets early on when there wasn't necessarily now you can look it up or you can ask ChatGPT or whatever.
Yeah.
Like how did you? Was it just pure sort of problem solving, or did you sort of have able to sort of connect dots that were already there?
So probably all those things. Having good mentors is always good. I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Unix, like a lot of people struggle to get out of Vi. And my mentor said, you've got to be able to use Vi because in every Unix environment, there will be an editor there that you'll be able to use. And so those types of skills, which are transferable, I guess, across different environments are really useful. Like I was a big C programmer, then I was a big Perl programmer, and now I'm sort of a Python guy. So, all of those skills are really useful. While I probably don't write much C these days, I'll still use Perl if I need to do something, with a file and make it easier to understand and to move around. So I still use those skills now.
Got it. Very good. So I want to know a little bit about your current work here for people who are interested in what you do. Can you tell me about your position as vice president of, is it EMEA or EMEA? Or?
You can say it both ways.
Okay. Vice president of EMEA's consulting and professional services at TrustWave. Like, what are your day-to-day responsibilities in this particular type of position? Because that's a fairly word-heavy title. Yeah. And what skills from previous positions did you absolutely need to be qualified for this one?
Again, another great question. So my day-to-day work is managing teams. So I've got a pen test team, I've got a cyber advisory team, I've got people who do sort of threat type work as well. So, standard security consulting type work. So managing teams, making sure that clients are happy, making sure that we're delivering reports on time, some budget work, making sure that we're hitting our numbers, all the boring stuff that nobody really cares about except me and my boss. So making sure those things are done. So sort of good man management. One thing I learned pretty early is I used to do a lot of government work in a previous role, and that would be big teams of pen testers, testing big environments. So an ability to lead a technical team to make sure that we're hitting our objectives. And these pen tests could last 3 weeks, and there could be 8 people there for 3 weeks. It's a lot of man hours to corral and organize and get into something sensible at the end of that. So that was something that's been really, really useful throughout my career. And that's basically what I'm doing now, is corralling and getting people into the right place to do the right thing.
Yeah, you mentioned that the sort of number crunching is something that quote only you and your boss find interesting. But that's a push pull that we hear a lot with people who started in very heavy tech positions and now find themselves managing, or as you say, corralling groups of people. Was that a point of friction for you originally? Because I know a lot of people say, I really love doing the hands-on work, and then one day I was told, you're a manager now, and it's like you don't get to actually sort of play. Was that a hard thing for you, or was it a pretty natural transition?
It was definitely conscious. I was aware that it was going to change. I did do like a mini MBA as part of my studies many years ago, so I did have an understanding of a balance sheet and profit and loss and revenue and all those types of things. So I was aware of it in the background, and sort of maybe subconsciously I knew it was going to come. It's probably the right thing for my career development. But I'd be lying if I said I don't miss pen testing. Something I've always enjoyed doing. So I take a lot of pride and pleasure actually reading pen test reports. And I still speak with clients. So if there's a quarterly business review or an enterprise business review, I'll be there presenting, sort of big issues or impactful issues. So while I might not be hands on keyboard all the time, I'm still there or thereavouts.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was going to ask if you still sort of kept a foot in the game or whatever, but you dabble a little bit. Okay, good. That's cool. Like I said, everyone's career has multiple acts to it, so that makes total sense. Like I say, whenever I read the comments in our website or on our YouTube page or whatever, cyber listeners always asking us to talk about the process of pen testing, the use of pen testing tools, strategies that go into a good pen test. So, I want to start about with your process of tool making to achieve your end. So I don't know if this is necessarily going to go anywhere or not. And if you say this is a dead end, just let me know. But in 2013, you created a tool called RedSnarf to retrieve hashes and credentials from workstations. It was specifically designed to, quote, leave no evidence on the host of intrusion or exfiltration. This includes files, processes, and services, not cause undue damage to the host, i.e. forcing the host to reboot. So that sounds like a fairly granular and specific use of tool there. Can you know about how the project that required the creation of this specific tool came about?
Yeah, absolutely. Me and a colleague, we were on site doing some government work, so we couldn't get out to the internet. We had a lot of hosts that we needed to sort of extract information from. We were very conscious that these were sensitive hosts, so we didn't want to drop anything and do anything silly. So we created some Python scripts. They're very lightweight on purpose, purposely lightweight. Okay. And then we would use that set of tooling then to grab all the hashes and to crack them and all those types of things. So we would use that as the basis. That was the idea. And then from that, then we decided to create a tool that was, again, very lightweight, wouldn't be too heavy in terms of its processing power and not make too much mess on a computer. Because when you're sort of dealing with threats, the really, really good threat actors, you don't know they're there. You don't know they've even been there. So we're trying to mimic that, making sure that files are not removed or not touched too heavily. So that was the sort of the genesis of the idea, and it was just we built it, and it just sort of kept adding to it. Then some people we put on the Git repository internally in the organization, kept adding to it, and it was a great project. We won Tool of the Year. Which is great. So I had a free iPad, which the kids could use. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, how long did it take to sort of? Was it sort of a gradual process? You put it on the Git, and then were you still sort of tinkering with it beyond that?
Oh, continuously tinkering with it.
Continuously tinkering.
As tools and techniques change and develop, we'd add a new feature, or we'd even remove a feature if it was too heavy and too cumbersome. Always, event logs were getting flashed or something like that. So we'd always be tinkering with it and trying to make it as lightweight and useful as possible. Now, it doesn't get used anymore. I don't think anybody's looking after the repo anymore, which is a shame because I put a lot of effort into it. But at a certain point in time, it was a big project for me and my team.
Yeah, I would imagine that sort of co-creating a tool that, even if for a short period of time, was being used and, as you said, got an award and was being used by the community, is a really good way to kind of get your name into the community. Did you find like a sort of people were like, oh, now I know who Ed Williams is a little more?
I wouldn't say it was that famous, but certainly having it was a good tool. Like I would go places and present, and people would be aware of it. It was in Kali repos and things like that. So it was definitely being used out and about in the wild. But I would say for anybody who's looking to get into the industry, creating a tool, good, bad, or indifferent, is a brilliant way to get into it and to really understand the process. Like using a tool is one thing, building a tool and maintaining a tool is something completely different and something you get a lot of experience from.
Okay, well, I'm going to be asking you a little more about that a little later, actually, possibly after we turn the recorder off here. But I want to definitely go back into that. So, okay, so we want to talk practicals and sort of like from a job role here. Obviously, you've been involved in pen testing through several different eras and styles, and I imagine we'll see more big changes in the coming years. It's hard not to imagine that. But what advice do you have for aspiring pen testers and red teamers in 2025?
The one bit of advice would be to keep relevant. You will never know everything. It's not reasonable to expect that. But certainly don't be dismissive of new technologies. I remember when the cloud came out and there was a certain member of the pen test community, that's just computers somewhere else. It's the same. Well, actually, it's not the same. There's a different type of testing that's required. And now we're moving into AI, ML. That requires a different, the same mindset, but it does require different methodologies from before. So keeping relevant, keeping up to date, listening to podcasts, just enjoying the craft, I would say, the craft of pen testing, because you learn so much from other people, from listening to things, from building and tinkering. It takes me back to when I was that 7-year-old on the BBC. I'm basically the same person now, tinkering around, making mistakes. Try not to make mistakes on client sites. We've all been there and done things that we regret. But I would also say as well, owning up to mistakes and errors. That's okay. Like I've certainly, when I've managed teams, other team members have made errors, and it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just don't do it again and try and learn from that error is probably what I would say.
Okay, you mentioned things like AI and LLMs and so forth. Do you see like massive new learning areas opening up for people entering the industry now that they need to sort of like really get on top quickly?
So I would say there's probably a shortcut with AI and ML. You can get to the really interesting information and the really relevant information quicker, rather than listening or reading a book and say, oh, that might be useful, that might be useful. I think AI and ML is an accelerator for both attackers and defenders, in all honesty.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So I want to go back to the collaborative element of your tool making. You've created some of your own tools, but you also collaborated on larger projects, you said, of varying levels. But at the same time, I think regardless of what you contributed to it, you've done things that have multiple hands in the same project, and you've sort of had a community kind of tool builders. Is this something? Do you have any advice on how to get yourself out into the community and find these type of collaborators? Was creating RedSnarf sort of crucial to you, being asked by other people, hey, help us with this, or was it like a calling card?
So that's a good question. So that it was definitely an accelerator. It helped not get my name out there, but I was willing to contribute and willing to do something and have a go and roll my sleeves up. As I said, the pentest community is brilliant. If somebody's having a go and doing something, you get 100% support. The worst thing is the people on the sideline, the naysayers. You've got to be in the arena, giving it a go, giving it a crack. That is the main thing. So my advice would be, create a tool. It doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how good or bad it is, create a tool. And I guarantee your next tool will be better, and your next tool after that will be better again. By the time you get to your fifth or sixth, it'll probably be really, really useful for somebody.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. I remember hearing a long time ago, someone I knew who was a skateboarder said, like, if you do your own, like, even if you do a thing that no one else wants to do on their skateboard, like, no one can do it exactly the way you do it, and you're gonna create a style just by being like yourself or whatever. I think that's I guess from more of like professional cultivation period, how do I suppose the tool making process was part of it, but how do you sort of find your people in security and keep those working relationships and friendships strong?
Yeah, again, so I would say the pentest community is actually quite a small community globally.
Okay.
It's amazing. Once you meet somebody, you might move on in 5 years. You will know somebody who knows that person. It's actually a very small community. So once you can break into it, it's very welcoming. I would say personally from my own experience. So be yourself. Try not to be too condescending, I would say, but that's probably a rule for life, I would say. Be nice, be kind, all the things that I would say to anybody outside of pen testing. And it's a great community. It's very resilient, because it has to be, because things are hard and challenging. Pen testing is not an easy job. Consulting is not an easy job. There's a lot of expectation. There's always deadlines. There's always people like me asking for more from the team members. So just keep going and be resilient is probably a good place to start.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. So we've talked a lot about pen testing. Have you done any sort of red team work, any sort of offensive work as well?
Yeah. So moving on, so I did a lot of pen testing earlier, and then I did just do some pen testing. We sort of changed to a lot of red teaming. And that's really where the RedSnarf stuff come in, not leaving too many tools behind, being low and slow, as they say. So do a lot of red teaming offensive work. But one thing I always tell clients is, because there was a time when red teaming was the new, and they were always there, oh, we need a red team. I said, well, have you got your vulnerability scanning? Have you got your pen testing in place? All those other things that you need, because the red teaming is useless if you haven't got those other things in place.
Oh, yeah.
So as a boss now, I'm you've got to get that continuum of security in. Your OffSec is important, but so is all the other stuff, the managed security testing services, all that stuff. So I try and be a bit more pragmatic now than certainly when I was, everybody's got to do red teaming. You should be doing it all the time. We should have 6 months to conduct a red team, and that's not always feasible. So I try and be a lot more pragmatic and help organizations in terms of their maturity. That's the key thing.
Yeah, the people, like having a red team done on you, it feels like if you haven't done the sort of basic sort of things that pen testing would catch, and the basic sort of security hardening, it'd be like, saying, I want to fight Rocky Balboa tomorrow, but you haven't done any training. Like he's going to pulverize you.
That is,
like, what are you doing?
That's the perfect analogy. Absolutely spot on.
You gotta train for a red team. Like the red team is sort of like the apex of all this, right? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so if you don't even really know your own security mind, like what are you, okay. So, do you have any particular sort of, I don't know about war stories. I use war stories. That's a really bad metaphor, but like any unusual experiences with red teaming that you could relate, within the realms of an NDA?
Yeah, of course. My favorite one is always when we would do some social engineering or some sort of physical attacks, and then like the logical attacks as well. So working for an institution in Europe, we would compromise an Office 365 mailbox as it was then, and then we would after doing a lot of emailing and researching, so we had an email foretold, we would send an email saying, "Oh, somebody's going to come and check the fire extinguishers in 2 weeks." So then I'd come along then with my fire extinguisher testing kit on. We'd let reception know and all this stuff. Then I'd get a little BlackBerry device and we'd plug that in then on site. So while it's not particularly complicated and it's a well-trodden methodology, I like
Smart, though.
I like the ability of bringing the physical and the logical together, because that's really what the bad guys will do. Doing a pure logical red team is good and definitely stresses an environment. Having that physical social engineering path to it is really, really good, and you get a lot of benefit from that, I would say.
So to make sure you compromised a couple of email accounts or whatever, and you've told some very specific people, oh, there's going to be a fire extinguisher thing, and then those are the people who are going to be kind of nearby when they say, oh, there's the man with
there's
the
the
fire
guy,
extinguisher.
and then I've got the jacket on, and I've got all the stuff that I need.
Yeah.
So a lot of research and a lot of work, but a lot of fun as well.
I guess I assume I know the answer. What would have been the workaround, like, if for someone to not fall for that, just sort of confirm it with someone higher up, or like, okay, it's weird, fire extinguisher, and then just sort of ask around, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, so generally people are helpful and they want to be helpful. Like it was a reception, and I was emailing reception, so they knew I was coming. And again, receptionists by their very nature are helpful. They want you to move on to the next thing. So if you've got a bit of confidence and you've got that sort of that little pretext, probably going to be okay. But the checks obviously check up the chain, and that's a good thing. Should we be having a fire extinguisher check today? Whoever looks after that part of the team. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So, going back to the sort of nature of the job, pen testing and red teaming are professions that are kind of hands-on by nature, and they're very problem-solving intensive. So, like, if you really want to crack a problem open and the world sees it, they want to hear more from you. And we talked about collaborators and so forth. But I guess because a lot of our listeners are just getting their career journey started, what is your advice for newcomers specifically trying to get early wins or make an early splash into sort of breaking into this type of work?
So when I think back to my career, for 24 months, I was obsessive. I would eat, sleep, dream about pen testing. Those are the days when a book was really useful. I'd have a stack of books and I would just devour them all. I would practice. As I said, for a period of time, my parents and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, would probably say I went mad, because it was the only thing I would do. It's the only thing I wanted to talk about. I was completely obsessed about it. So if you can get into that groove, you're in a very smart space. When people start to say, hold on, you're doing too much, then you're in it. You're in that groove.
Yeah, great.
It doesn't last forever, because you can't keep that going. You will burn out. And I did burn out. But I sort of turned it down a bit. My girlfriend sort of got hold of me, and we sort of had a bit more of a balance in life. But certainly for that 24, even 36 months, I was obsessed. And I got a job. That's the time from when we had the first pen test to when I actually got a job. It was that time period. So I was just devouring as much information as I could, practicing as much as I could. And I'd say now it's easy to practice. There's labs online. There's a lot of shortcuts you can now do that'll get you ahead. Because in those days, I had to build all my own labs. I had to build my own machines. I had to misconfigure them, or I had to create an app that was misconfigured in some way. So those shortcuts used to your benefit. But get out there, put your name out there, create tools. It doesn't matter if it's a tool that already exists. Put your own spin on it, exactly as you were saying. So there's, it's probably easier now than it's ever been to be successful, but at the same time, it's easier to be distracted. So be really focused, have that bit of obsessive streak, and be resilient. Don't take a knockback. Take it as the next move forward.
Okay, I want to keep sort of narrowing the aperture, because that's great advice for like the first maybe 3 to 6 months of work here. But because skill learning happens steadily and over periods of time, let me ask you this: once our listeners are done with this episode, turn the episode off, getting back to their day, what's one skill, no matter how small, that they should try to learn today if they want to get into it? Whether it's proficiency in a certain type of command line prompt, or a comfort with a certain tool, or a productivity hack. What would you start with?
Oh, I would say, I'll say two. If you can get out of VI, without having to ask anybody, that's a win. That's a good thing. But being proficient at a programming language like Python, I'd say is a pretty good start. Be able to, use sockets and parse a file. If you can do those two things, you're probably going to, that's probably 80% of your effort there, because you can create brute force tools, you can parse a file, you can cut it up as you want. So that would be a good start. And if you can do that on the command line, using cut or sed or whatever it is, that's also really good. So be proficient with tools that are available. Like, there's probably a Python interpreter on most Unix boxes. You're going to be unlucky for there not to be one. Somebody's had to actively remove it, and I would never do that.
Right.
So just being proficient at tools that you've got, or even PowerShell. PowerShell can be really powerful. You can get so much done with that. So pick your poison: Python, PowerShell, command line, and be really good at it. And you will quickly learn then other tools and techniques.
I think that's great advice too, because it sort of gets you out of the mindset of, if I want to start doing this, I need to buy or acquire a thing. Like, this is all stuff that you already probably have or have easy access to. Like, start with your backyard, start with the thing that's already, came standard with your toolbox.
As a good pen tester, I would say, isn't bringing in unnecessary tools. If there's something, if there's something that you can use that's there, ready to go, just use that, because the noise is just a lot less. You're less likely to get caught or to get pinged.
Yeah. So before we go here, Ed, I want to ask something of you that I ask all of our guests. What's the best piece of career advice you ever received?
Oh, be resilient.
Okay.
Don't give up. Never give up.
Yeah.
Never ever give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's easy to give up. Most people give up. Just keep going. Even if you're going backwards, a couple of steps forward, and what I call it, like stacking days. So you might learn a little command. Eventually, those stacking days will add up, and you will be in some environment that you've never seen before. Oh yeah, remember that. Boom, boom, boom. You're away your route. So never give up.
Heck yeah. Knock down 7 times, get up 8
Exactly.
times.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, Ed, we didn't talk about it a lot, but TrustWave is kind of a big name. Tell our listeners all about TrustWave and what you do for your clients.
Yeah, so we're a managed security service provider, an MSSP. That's not my team. I look after the consulting and professional services. So we do pen testing, red teaming, cyber advisory, DIFA, all that good stuff. So we're part of the Spider Labs team. So we've been around for 25 years. We've written loads of good tools. We've been around a long time. We know what we're doing. That's what I say to people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one last question. Tell our listeners where to find out more about Ed Williams, TrustWave, or any events or things you'd like to promote about yourself or your company.
Go on the website, trustwave.com. Pretty straightforward. I'm on LinkedIn, Edward Williams. Great. Please link LinkedIn
Edward
to me.
Williams.
I've got the BBC Micro as my background, so you'll recognize.
All ties in. All right, fabulous.
So you'll recognize that. I'm happy to connect. I get a lot of people asking me questions. I'm always happy to do my best.
Somewhere just out of frame, a old cassette player is humming and ready to deliver your data.
Exactly.
So Ed Williams, thank you for regaling our listeners with some of your best pen test and red team stories. I know they're going to love this episode.
My pleasure.
And thank you to everyone who watches, listens, and writes into the podcast with feedback. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover or guests you'd like to see on the show, drop them in the comments below. We'll try and do what we can. Now, before we go, don't forget infosecinstitute.com/free is where you can get a whole bunch of free and exclusive stuff for CyberWork listeners. It's here that you'll find our free cybersecurity talent development playbook, which includes in-depth training plans and strategies for the 12 most common security roles, including SOC analyst, pen tester, cloud security engineer, information risk analyst, privacy manager, secure coder, ICS professional, and more. Want to know how much a career in cybersecurity pays? Get our free cybersecurity salary guide for the latest data on popular certifications and their related roles. There's also security awareness posters, ebooks, and you can sign up for 100 plus free courses in our InfoSec skills platform. You can learn incident response, forensic security architecture, and more. Even I've played around in there and I didn't cry once. So it's actually pretty easy to use. One more time, that's infosecinstitute.com/free, and the link is in the description below. One last time, thank you to Ed Williams and TrustWave, and thank you all for watching and listening. This is Krisenko signing off. Until next time, make sure to learn something new every day, keep one step ahead of the story, and don't forget to have a little fun along the way. Bye for now.